tonight's big stories, the Philippine Navy confirms there's been communications interference in its missions at the West Philippine Sea. We'll discuss this with Philippine Navy spokesperson for West Philippine Sea, Commodore Roy Vincent Trinidad, later on.
The Transportation Department announced that the third tranche of the loan for the subway project, amounting to nearly 56 billion pesos, has been approved by Japan. We'll be speaking with DOTr Undersecretary Batan about this later on.
And the Justice Department once again shrugs off rumors that DOJ Secretary Boying Remulla may be replaced due to his ill health. Remulla himself says, maraming nangangarap.
Welcome to the show. I'm Regina.
I'm Gretchen.
And I'm Shawn.
Just as a side note, it is free to dream.
Oh, libre mangarap.
But here's a big question for everyone. Should the plebiscite for charter change be held simultaneously with the 2025 midterm elections? Well, President Marcos wants to do so, but some lawmakers are concerned that this would politicize proposed amendments to the charter. One of those opposed to doing it simultaneously is Assistant Majority Leader in Lanao del Sur, Representative Zia Alonto Adyong. Adyong says they want to fast-track discussions on Chacha and hold the plebiscite ahead of the elections to, quote, insulate it from political innuendos and political interpretation.
We've been saying this all along. We want to insulate this issue on economic provisions. This will open up to several political interpretation, and this might use as a political campaign, and masisira po yung pinaka-intention ng administration. Gusto natin na tapusin na po ang usapin ng economic provision sa Constitution at hindi dapat maging subject to political contest.
But there are also some lawmakers who are in favor of the move. They say it's easier to work on a timeline for an economic chacha that is favorable to the president.
I think we would say that this is welcome in the sense that at least alam natin na talagang gusto ng presidente na magkaroon ng charter change at least before 2025.
But again, as I pointed out yesterday, the Senate and the lower house are supposed to be independent of the executive. So they don't necessarily have to follow what the president says.
But baka sinasabi
is my
niya,
point.
baka sinasabi niya, mas mama-aprobahan ka agad.
If they just go along with this timeline.
Parang ganun.
But it's also bizarre. I understand where you're coming from, and I will agree with you, Reg, that sanay na sanay ako, no? Ever since grade school, no, separation ng executive, judiciary, and legislative.
That's right.
However, I think for the past two Congresses since the term of President Duterte, parang super majority, and the super majority has this strange behavior where it really follows what the president wants. As we've seen the opposition decimated, the minority decimated to like a handful of members. Two in the Senate, iilan lang sa Kamara. So
there's that point too, you're right. And you're right, maybe it just makes things easier to get things approved.
There seems to be
Compromise,
worries that the bill will be railroaded, right? Siyempre, parang nakita natin nangyari yan with confidential funds, with kung ano pa in the past. So they're worrying that it might happen with this one. Sabi nga ng House, ang target nila before Holy Week. Ang Senado naman, mukhang
pero sinabi nila, hindi namin mamadaliin tapos yung target before Holy Week.
Medyo malapit na yun. Malapit na yun.
That's a month away.
Yeah.
A month away.
Exactly.
And also,
Less than a
Senate
month away.
President Mig Zubiri had said before that the Senate is aiming to pass RBH 6 nga before May 25, which is when they break.
Yes, they're
Sinidai break. Yeah.
So, Representative Zia Alonto Adyong was also interviewed on 1PH sa Totoo Lang, where he said na he clarified na economic provisions lang daw talaga ang gagalawin, at sabi rin niya, no, they have no problem with separate voting as per the Senate's wishes. Pero ang tanong daw kailan daw to mangyayari?
May personal take on this because sabi ko nga, habang wala pa pong clear interpretation ng Supreme Court, ay magkakaroon po talaga tayo ng various interpretation. This is my take, no, on the issue. Ako mas gusto ko if it requires for the both houses to vote separately on separate occasions, I have no problem with that. Pero ang question po is, when would the Senate do that?
Okay.
That's the question eh. Kasi sinasabi po nila is priority nila yung constitutional amendment, and yet we see, based on the pronouncement of SP Zubiri, they will tackle that in 2025.
talagang hindi po nila ma-approve the soonest possible time. Ang gusto ko personally, ang gusto ko is this would be approved and this would be before the Lenten break, no?
So yan, we're seeing divergence of views in terms of the procedural issues and also the timeline.
The timeline. Okay, so sabi rin ni Mandaluyong Congressman Naphtali Orboyet Gonzales na pwede raw din nilang gawing concurrent resolution at saka ipapadala sa Senado. And if they do that, guaranteed daw no that both houses will indeed be voting separately.
Siyempre, para maging panukalang, para maging batas yan, papadala mo sa Senate yan dahil bicameral kami, di ba? So, pero kung walang ipapasa ang Senate na hindi nila i-take up yung local bill namin, then it dies there. Pwede naman namin i-amend yung amin, ilagay na rin namin doon na voting separately.
But all that said, at the end of the day, it's still the COMELEC that will be holding this plebiscite for Cha-Cha. So, do they agree with the president that this should be done simultaneously with the 2025 elections? Julie Baiza has the answer. Go ahead, Julie.
Shawn, the Commission on Elections says they can hold simultaneous electoral exercises in 2025. This, of course, following President Marcos's call for such a move.
Susunod tayo, tatalima doon sa legal opinion na yun ng aming law department na pag-aralan, wala namang batas na nagsasabing bawal na pagsabayan ang isang national and local elections at plebisito. At yun po ay na-submit sa amin noong nakaraang linggo pa ng law department natin.
COMELEC Chairman George Garcia explains that holding the plebiscite alongside the elections will allow them to save more funds. All they have to do is print additional ballots together with the election ballots that include questions for the plebiscite. COMELEC notes that if the plebiscite will be held separately, they will need to have additional funds of up to 13 billion pesos.
Wala pong halos itong gastos na dagdag doon sa gastos na namin na para sa national and local election ng May 2025 sapagkat wala naman pong kakailanganin dagdag na guro o kakailanganin na dagdag na gamit sapagkat kung maglalagay lang tayo ng mga katanungan doon po sa balota, ilalagay po namin yan sa front page ng balota kung sakali. Hahaba lang po yung balota pero parehas pa rin po yung bayad natin.
The COMELEC, though, is still wishing for some additional funds for honoraria of teachers who will work as electoral board members.
Honoraria naman para sa ating mga guro kahit 2,000 pesos dahil sa medyo hahaba po ng konti yung paglilingkod nila sa bawat presinto. Nararapat lang naman po sapagkat sila po naman ay walang tax exemption sa kasalukuyan.
Shawn, the COMELEC says they already have a design of the sample ballot for the plebiscite. They say vote counting machines can also count yes or no answers in the ballots. Shawn?
Thanks so much for that, Julie Baiza.
Yun nga naman, mahirap nga naman din kasi, kumbaga, gagastos ka naman laki. Pag separate pa, wala nang dagdag gastos kung dadagdag mo lang sa form.
Naiintindihan ko
yung
kasi
vote yes
kuripot
or
din
no,
ako.
right?
I mean, I understand. I'm also kuripot. Pero, one, I think it doesn't look good na pabago-bago yung sasabihin mo.
Because as we were just pointing out yesterday, just a few weeks ago, Chair George Garcia said, no, it cannot be held in the same year as an election year, right? It has to be a separate...
Yeah, it has to be a separate year. And he cited the Supreme Court ruling prohibiting the holding of a regular election alongside with or simultaneous with a national plebiscite. The reason for that the Supreme Court ruled that way is sabi nila dapat makapag-focus tayo pag regular election to think about, sinong bobotohin natin.
Which is a very valid reason.
It's very valid.
Right? Because if you put the two together, those are two big
It is very
issues to
confusing,
tackle.
especially
It is.
because the amendments to our Constitution are not that simple to explain to the people. Katulad na, for example, yung magdadagdag ka ng unless provided for by law, di ba? To a certain article in the Constitution. Paano mo nga naman ipapaliwanag sa mga tao?
Second of
How to
all, di
vote
ba?
on
Parang yung balot mo back and forth. Tapos
It's
nandun lang siya sa
confusing,
ilalim.
Exactly. And then, yeah, it's so easy to just randomly mark it.
Yes.
Right, whether or not you understood what it's asking you, right? So they do need a long runway in order to carry out an education campaign. But yun na nga, we're just a little over a year away from midterm elections.
Ang tanong,
So
sino kaya kaninong timeline kaya ang susundan ng COMELEC?
we shall find out and cover that story too.
Sa lower or sa upper house? Ano?
Or sa presidente.
Ito naman, medyo alarming na balita ngayong araw. The Philippine Navy says it has monitored an increase in the interference on the electronic communication capabilities of its vessels in the West Philippine Sea. This apparently has been going on for the past 3 to 4 years. That's according to Philippine Navy spokesperson for West Philippine Sea, Commodore Roy Vincent Trinidad. They've been noticing an increase in cyber and electronic interference, not just in ship equipment, but for land-based communication as well. While the Navy did not directly specify where the alleged interference came from, they say that it's clear what the motive was.
That there's a deliberate attempt to prevent you from communicating ship to ship or on land. Not only for our communication aboard ship or on land, but also cell phones.
Yesterday, PCG spokesperson DOTr said that China has jammed the signal of Philippine ships at Scarborough Shoal several times already. Navy officials say they're now being careful about what they release.
There are many ways for a superpower to know what goes on the other side. Checking on the communication is just one of them. We're also doing all efforts to be able to prevent ourselves from releasing whatever information may give them advance notice of our plans.
In related news, the Philippine Coast Guard says that authorities are looking into a possible online security breach through malware in the hacking of its Facebook page. On Monday night, the PCG's Facebook page posted malicious videos after an unknown entity gained access to the account. When we last checked just before 8 p.m., the malicious videos were still up on their page. This is already the third time that the PCG reported a security breach in its social media accounts.
Wala pa tayong matibay na batayan para magsabi na itong kung sino ang may kagagawan. At ang tinitingnan nga natin dito dahil last month yung website ang itinry na i-hack, pangalawa yung Twitter na na-hack din pero naibalik natin. Ito ngayon yung Facebook, mukhang may concerted effort na tukuyin talaga yung Philippine Coast Guard as subject of hacking.
Now, going back to the communication interference issue, we'll try to get more details on this from Philippine Navy spokesperson for West Philippine Sea, Commodore Roy Vincent Trinidad. He joins us live tonight via Zoom. Magandang gabi po, Commodore.
Yes, good evening. Gretchen, Shawn, and Regina.
Okay, Commodore.
Magandang gabi po sa inyo lahat dyan.
Unang-una, no, how exactly did you figure out that there was an outside force interfering with communication signals? And is this happening only at Scarborough or also the Spratlys? As I remember, kami po, nag-cover po kami sa Spratlys. Wala po talagang signal, ano? So ano po, in what way have they been interfering with our communication systems?
First and foremost, ma'am, ito po ay hindi normal na pangyayari. We have to understand that the systems of communications, the sensors of the ship work normally before any mission. We test all of them. There are times that we find that they are not working properly. We could not communicate. Our GPS or our radars get interference. These are not normal activities, and these have been noted mostly in the West Philippine Sea area.
Okay, Commodore, linawin lang natin. No? There have been reports na ginagawa na raw ito for the last 3 or 4 years. Tama ba yun? You just mentioned that ngayon nyo lang siya napansin. Can you clarify that?
Actually, ma'am, I'm sure 3 to 4 years, but I have been talking with commanding officers who have been saying that as long as 6 to 8 years ago, they have already experienced these activities.
Okay, ang next question dyan, Commodore, communications ninyo, right? So, ang daming equipment on board a ship. Meron tayong communications equipment, there's navigation equipment. So, this one, just to be clear ulit, no, sa communications nyo lang, so bale, ship-to-ship communication ang affected. Is your navigation system unaffected by this?
Yes, ma'am. Affected are navigation systems, like the radars, the GPS, and the communication systems. It is not a total malfunction, hindi na siya babalik ulit, but there are certain times in certain places in the West Philippine Sea that we experience these interferences.
Commodore, I wonder if you could tell us the significance of this. I mean, in general, we understand that this is a serious problem, but tell us, ano ba yung kino-communicate or what's being, when you say interference, what kind of information is possibly being, taken without approval here?
When I say interference, I mean that they don't function normally. That for the, let's say, for the communication equipment, you could not hear. There would be a lot of clatter, a lot of static. For the GPS or the radars, they would give you false readings, or there would be totally no readings. It would be a blackout screen. Again,
Okay. So parang
these are
jammers?
interferences on certain parts of the West Philippine Sea and on certain times of the day.
And when
Hindi ito totally na nasisira ang equipment.
and each time it happens, how long approximately does it last?
It lasts, ma'am, differently. Sometimes from 2 to 4 hours. Sometimes saglit lamang, a matter of minutes.
Do we know, Commodore, kung anong klaseng equipment yung ginagamit nila? Alam naman natin, minsan pag may big gathering, mga concerts, ganyan. Or kahit sa EDSA, may mga dead spots minsan na talagang pati yung cellphone mo namamatay. Do we know what kind of jammer they're using to confuse the signal or to, mess with it out there in the sea?
Yes, ma'am, there are what we call dead spots. But on certain times of the day, on different days of the month, these areas are not dead spots for our comms equipment, for our navigation equipment. So we know that there are deliberate attempts to interfere with the normal functioning of the communications and sensors of the ship. We have been trying to trace this, but
Okay, so
suffice it to say, we know that there are deliberate attempts
Commodore,
to interfere with the navigation and
gaano
communication
ka
equipment.
komplikado to interfere with GPS and radars? Alam po natin yan na parang mawala na lahat ng signal pero may GPS ka. Meron ka pa rin compass kahit papano. Satellite po ba ang gamit? Just help us understand how complicated is it to complete interfering with these things that you mentioned?
To be able to interfere with a modern warship, you would need a more capable equipment. Yung mga barko natin, bago ng mga kanyang kagamitan, so we suspect that it is a powerful third party or other party trying to interfere with us. Hindi naman po ito maabot sa punto na malalagay sa alanganin yung ating mga barko because we have a lot of backup systems.
Okay.
And there are procedures or protocols how to address situations like this.
Pero yung Starlink, makakalusot naman yun. Kung mayroon tayong Starlink, bawat barko, di ba? Paano may signal?
Yes, ma'am.
The question is, safe ba to use something?
Mahal yung Starlink for the seas.
But Commodore, ang tanong ngayon, does this action, yung pag-interfere with our communications, our navigation systems, does this constitute as electronic warfare? Or how are you taking it? And what is the action plan moving forward?
I would say, ma'am, that at the start, this was a big issue for the Philippine Navy. And then we were also able to develop our systems to be able to adjust to them. Right now, they have become part of the new normal in the West Philippine Sea, and our men aboard the ships know how to address these issues already. I would say probably, I'm not an IT expert, but this could already be a form of electronic warfare.
How then could we defend ourselves, do you think? I mean, apart from the backup protocols that you have, how can we then reinforce our communication system so that we would not be vulnerable to that interference?
Yes, ma'am. We have a capability upgrade program in the Philippine Navy and the armed forces in general. Part of this is to have more secure communications and other systems aboard the ship, navigation, different sensors. So we're confident that what we face right now, the challenge we face, we could overcome them or we could adjust to them.
And then, of course, the big question is, do we know yet who's behind this? Of course, the officials have been careful to say, but there are some news reports today naming China. But do we have any more information, Commodore?
Yes, ma'am. I would not like to state, I would like to venture a guess kung sino gumagawa nito sa atin. I would need, the results of a forensics probably to be able to say definitely. But we have been experiencing this. We have been able to adjust to it. I just would not like to pinpoint the possible source of it, ma'am.
Commodore, could you give us scenarios at sea that could happen if we are not able to cope with the interference?
Ma'am, if we could not cope with this could interfere in our navigation, in our communications. It could possibly run the ship aground. But again, before we get to those situations, we have sufficient protocols to be able to adjust. And so far, we haven't had any incident, any untoward incident because of all these interferences.
O nga, sana nga, Commodore, no, hindi kayo mag-end up having to open up maps and doing your navigation mano-mano. Although I'm sure kayang-kaya nyo yan. Cambio tayo ng slight. How is the situation? Like you said, things have been different no, around the West Philippine Sea, sa mga layag ninyo dyan. Recently, may monitoring daw ng approximately 50 Chinese vessels and fishing ships sa West Philippine Sea. Can you tell us more about anong nagyari doon, Commodore?
Yes, ma'am. That was the monitoring for the past week on a particular day and particular area of the West Philippine Sea, subject to our monitoring capability. The bigger picture of this is we have to understand the strategic intent of China, which is to control the South China Sea. Their projection of forces could range from a high number to a low number. But whatever tactical actions there are, we should not lose sight of the strategic objective, which is control of the South China Sea. Let us not be lulled into a false sense of security that all seems well because we have only monitored a low number of the ships out at sea.
Okay, Commodore, yung naglagay na naman ng, ang tawag dito?
Barrier.
Floating barrier ang China. Ano po bang naging response natin doon?
Yun naman po, ma'am, is a primary function of the Philippine Coast Guard, it being a maritime law enforcement issue. The Philippine Navy fully supports the Philippine Coast Guard, the BFAR, and the other government maritime agencies, subject to the rules of engagement of the Philippine Navy and the armed forces. We are prepared to protect life and property subject to the provisions of the rules of engagement and international law.
All right. Recently, Commodore, President Marcos gave an order, I believe this also went out to the Navy, no, to step up patrols in the area. Have you already started stepping up patrols in the area? And I guess it's okay to talk about it. I'm sure nakita na kayo ng China dyan anyway.
Yes, ma'am. In fact, even without the guidance of the President, the Philippine Navy and the armed forces in general, and I believe also the other government agencies, have been performing their mandates. The AFP, the Philippine Navy, has been conducting regular air surveillance flights, maritime patrols, not only in the West Philippine Sea, but even in the northern islands, Papuyan Group of Islands, Batanes Province, all the way to the eastern seaboard, the Benham Rice or Philippine Rice.
So
but again, the guidance of the President is a very welcome directive to us that would further strengthen our resolve to ensure that our territory remains intact, ma'am.
Okay. Para kahit papaano may panapat tayo doon sa mga nagsashadow na Chinese Navy ships. As we all know, it's not just the Chinese Coast Guard that's present there. They also have the Navy ships, destroyers even, shadowing our Philippine ships.
But just very
But of
quickly,
course,
on a last note, Commodore, the resupply missions have not been affected?
Ma'am, could you please say it again, ma'am?
Yung resupply missions natin, they've not been affected by all these issues?
Yes, ma'am. The resupply missions have not been affected. I would like to state that in the West Philippine Sea, we have 9 island detachments. Ayungin is only one of them. The 8 others, we regularly conduct resupply missions without any interference. So all these interferences, whether physical or electronic, have in no way affected our missions for the 9 island detachments.
That's very good to hear.
All right, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Philippine Navy spokesperson for West Philippine Sea, Commodore Roy Vincent Trinidad. In other news, President Bongbong Marcos is off again, this time to the land down under. Marcos will be in Australia from February 28 to 29 to address its parliament and meet with senior Aussie officials. He would be the first Filipino leader to address Australian Parliament and will in fact speak to a joint sitting. According to Bloomberg, a joint sitting of both houses of parliament was a rare honor previously only accorded to leaders such as former U.S. President Barack Obama. Marcos is also scheduled to meet with the Filipino community in Melbourne and is set to make his second visit there on March 4 to 6 for the ASEAN-Australia Special Summit. The Foreign Affairs Department said the president will likely discuss maritime defense cooperation and follow up on the initial agreements signed with Australia.
And so in terms of defense and security, that will actually be talked, will be discussed, but also in terms of what's happening in the region and what is happening within our region, one issue will be South China Sea. And it's also worth mentioning that Australia and the Philippines are maritime nations, and it cannot be denied that it will be something that will have to be raised as well. They're really looking forward to finalizing agreements that will further bilateral relations, defense cooperation, economic cooperation, people-to-people linkages are some of the issues that actually have been incorporated in the joint declaration.
Well, up next, from defense, we go to infrastructure. The subway is underway. Metro Manila's first ever underground rail project is about 40% complete. We'll get more details on that from DOTr Undersecretary TJ Batan when the big story returns. Stay with us.
Kumpara po dun sa mga napuntahan nyo dati na airport, paano nyo kumpara tong NAIA? Pangit nga po ba talaga?
Medyo. Yun lang, sa totoo lang po.
Bakit ba?
Kasi sa structural siguro, saka sa kalinisan.
Sabay, maganda naman talaga airport talaga sa mga ibang bansa. Yung mga, parang dito sa sobrang higpit. Security guard, masungit din.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Minsan kasi, di ba, actually,
Keeping it real.
totoo naman. Minsan kasi pagod
But
pagod
that's
sila.
exactly.
Sobrang daming tao.
But you don't judge. Do you judge an airport by the security guard?
No, but I think it's
You
also
know
the
what?
By the
conditions,
disposition
right?
of the security
Your
guard.
environment affects your mood.
Okay, okay.
This
But
is
it's
one
not-
of the countries where ang dami talagang security guard, and security guards are also asked to do things that I think are not part of their
Okay,
job. So,
yeah.
pinapagbigyan ko si Kuya Guard kung medyo
Totoo
masungit
naman.
siya dahil di niya trabaho yun.
Well, as you heard, there's not much love for airports on the ground. Our reporter Gerard de la Peña went out there to get some feedback after a new study was published last week showing NAIA remaining among the worst airports for business travelers. The Ninoy Aquino International Airport ranked 4th worst in Asia in the survey by the UK website Business Financing. NAIA got a score of 2.78 out of 10 from business travelers who were asked to rate airports in the region. Now, topping the list of worst Asian airports is Kuwait International Airport with a score of 1.69. Other recent issues include a series of power outages last year, as well as complaints over immigration protocols. Transport Secretary Jaime Bautista said one of the first orders of the business for the San Miguel-led consortium, which won the bid to upgrade it, is to expand the handling capacity of NAIA.
Alam niyo naman na this airport is congested, no? That's the reason why we want to modernize it, no? This airport is designed to handle 35 million passengers and we have almost 50 million, no? So, ano gagawin natin? We will implement the privatization, we will modernize, no? And if we increase the capacity to 60 million, mag-i-improve yung travel experience sa mga pasahero.
Taking a look at the best airports in Asia. And again, this is according to business travelers. Noi Bai International Airport in Vietnam topped the list, followed by Changi Airport in Singapore. There's also Hong Kong International Airport, Hamad International in Qatar, and Narita International in Japan. Vietnam's Noi Bai Airport, in fact, also topped the best airports in the world for business. Changi, Hong Kong, and Hamad International Airports also figured in that list. Parang gusto ko tuloy mag-Vietnam, ano, para tingnan ng
Ako rin
airport
eh.
nila.
Teka
Pwede
lang,
ba yun?
natalo niya yung Changi?
Have you been there?
Travelers.
Have you been there? No.
I know.
Briefly before.
So what
anyways,
makes it so good for business
on the bright
travelers?
side, the subway project is moving along.
Oh, that was fast.
Yes, of course.
Moving on to the better news.
Better news, always. The Metro Manila Subway is about 40% complete, according to the Department of Transportation. DOTr Secretary Jaime Bautista conducted a site visit on Monday, together with Finance Secretary Ralph Recto and Takema Sakamoto, the representative from JICA, or the Japan International Cooperation Agency, which is funding this project. The subway is set to be completed by 2029 and will have 17 stations running from Valenzuela to NAIA. Also today, the DOTr announced that JICA has approved the third tranche of the subway loan, which amounts to 55.7 billion pesos. The first tranche is to the tune of 38.8 billion pesos, while the second is just over 94 billion pesos. The loans have a long maturity, about 40 years each, with another grace period of between 12 to 13 years. The interest rate, quite low, sitting at 0.1% for non-consulting services and 0.01% for consulting services. So many projects in the pipeline. To talk us through them, we have with us via Zoom Transport Undersecretary TJ Batan tonight. TJ Usec, thank you so much for joining us. We've been trying to get you for a while.
Yes, good evening to everyone in the call and watching tonight.
Two very big, very important projects that you guys are handling right now: the subway and also the NAIA rehabilitation. Let's start with the subway project. Today you announced that you've signed the third tranche rather of the loan has been approved by JICA. But I note also with interest that the timeline for the subway has been pushed back. Now we're talking about 2029 completion. Tama ba?
That's correct. For the Metro Manila Subway project, we are looking at full operations by 2029. And as mentioned by our secretary when they visited the subway just the other day, we are looking at the possibility of a partial operations by 2027 or 2028, depending on whether the partial operation segment would be useful for our commuters.
Do you are you, well, I was gonna say, are you running into right-of-way issues as usual? But we already reported that you did several months ago. So I guess the better question is, have you resolved these?
Yes, right-of-way acquisition issues continue to be one of the challenges in the Metro Manila Subway project, as it is in any railway project or mega project of this scale. And we continuously address this. In fact, just earlier today, there was a coordination meeting of the Secretary Bautista sat together with the Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA, during a coordination meeting. And one of the key topics that were discussed was on problems and solutions to the right-of-way acquisition challenge.
You know, anything that will help improve our traffic situation excites us. 40% complete. Which parts of the Metro Manila Subway is complete already at this point? And give us a closer look into how the construction has been, what's been going underground, and how complicated is it to finish this project, given the urban planning that we already had decades ago?
Yeah. Indeed, it's very exciting to see the current status of the Metro Manila Subway because I guess we've never gotten this far for a project of this type. So this is our very first subway, and it's a pretty massive one at that compared to other subway lines in the world. This is 33 kilometers with 17 stations. And right now, we are already ongoing tunnel boring. This was visited by our Secretary Bautista, and Finance Secretary Ralph Recto just the other day. And out of the TBS, or we currently have 5 tunnel boring machines currently in Manila and in various stages of tunneling. So one of the interesting things here is that unlike an elevated railway project, the impact on road traffic is not as much because we only have works above the ground at the station locations. But between the stations, people don't realize our tunnel boring machines are already passing through. So that's one of the advantages of this type of transport project, and that is minimizing the impact on traffic above ground during construction.
Right. Of course, we're so excited when we hear 40% completed. That's almost half. We were wondering, I was actually quite the doubtful Thomas here, Usec TJ, thinking that, it's going to take a while, it's going to get delayed. You did push back, though, the full operation target date by 1 whole year. Why does it take longer to finish the end part, or like the back end of the project, as compared to the first 40%, which was actually pretty fast?
Yeah. First of all, I guess for context, I think many of our viewers or many of our stakeholders, to get a sense of how long does it typically take to construct a project like this. Construction from first day of shovel hitting the ground, the average construction time for a subway project is 72 months. And that is shovel on the ground. That does not include the 18 to 24 months that you need to do the feasibility study, the 1 to 2 years that you need to do the design, the 1 to 2 years that you need to do the procurement, and of course, the right-of-way acquisition. So we're already done with those earlier pre-construction activities. We've gotten investment approval, we've gotten financing. I saw that you flashed earlier some of the loans, the 3 tranches of loans that we have gotten so far. Almost all of our contractors are already on the ground. We continue to deliver right of way. And I guess on the question of why the latter part of the project takes time, it's largely because this is the time that that involves most physical works. So as it's being flashed on your on the screen now, what you see here is actual hard infrastructure works that you can touch, that you can see, that you can feel. And this is the time that we say a project reaches the point of no return. So we've reached that point in the Metro Manila Subway project. It's just a matter of time, and in a few years, our commuters will start benefiting, will start experiencing this world-class infrastructure that's being delivered under our President's Build Better More program.
Speaking of a point of no return, ibig sabihin po, hindi matutulad ito sa Makati Subway. What exactly are the developments on that end? I believe there are some complications with the transfer of jurisdiction from Makati to Taguig. Merong tumigil doon. And is there a possibility that this Metro Manila Subway could be linked to that in the future? Kung sakaling matuloy na rin po yun.
First of all, the Makati Subway is a project of the Makati local government. We have been coordinating with them in the development of their subway project. And in fact, one of the discussions that we've had previously is interconnecting or having a transfer station between the Makati Subway and the Metro Manila Subway. The issue now is that the area where we were supposed to interconnect, this is in the University of Makati area. This is part of what was what the Supreme Court decided to be part of Taguig and not part of Makati. Now, this is a project of the Makati local government unit, and what we understand is that the Makati LGU is trying to find other ways for them to be able to continue with the project without going into those areas that the courts have said to be part of Taguig City. Whether we can still interconnect with them or not would depend on their final realignment or reconfiguration. But what we say is that there's an advantage to our commuters by interconnecting our mass transport systems. And whenever there's an opportunity to do so, we will definitely connect with those other mass transit lines.
Related to that, Usec TJ, sorry, Reg. I know for a fact that some of the subway stations, have moved from this side of the road to the other lane to across the street. So there have been these change of plans. With the airport also having been bidded out recently, and we know that the subway will go to NAIA. Thank you for that. How does this change in any way? Are we guaranteed that it will be a seamless experience taking the subway to the airport, and it won't end up like having to cross a street that's really difficult to cross and sweating out there?
First of all, it is absolutely true that there will be an NAIA station for the subway. The subway station will be right across Terminal 3. And to make sure that there will be a seamless connection or a seamless transfer between the subway station and NAIA Terminal 3 in particular, we have included in the requirements, in the terms of preference of our NAIA concessionaire, the project that we awarded recently, part of the obligations of our airport operator, of our NAIA operator, will be to develop that seamless connection between the subway and NAIA Terminal 3. Now, between and among the terminals, Terminal 1, Terminal 2, Terminal 3, there is also an obligation for our airport operator to develop a convenient connection between and among those terminals.
Okay, since we're on the topic of NAIA, we did want to talk to you as well about the privatization. It was one of the fastest privatization processes that we've seen. You were able to award it to the San Miguel-led consortium within a span of just 6 months. But the big question that was raised about that is the revenue share offer that San Miguel provided, which is about 82.16%, more than twice what the other two bidders offered. Talk us through that. What was the discussions like when the Bids and Awards Committee were debating this?
Yeah. First of all, from the very beginning, when we published the NAIA PPP for bidding in August of 2023, the rules have been very clearly set out. The bid parameter or the selection parameter, as we called it, has been defined to be the highest percentage revenue share that will be given to government. So the rules of the game were set out at the very beginning, and that is what led to our three bidders submitting their respective bids based on this. So as you've mentioned, the winning bid from the San Miguel consortium is 82%. The next bid is at 33% from the joint venture of from the GMR Airports Consortium. And from our Manila International Airport Consortium, we received a bid of 26%. Now, what will this be based on? The 82% will be a percentage against the top line revenues, the total revenues of the airport operator, less the passenger service charges, the PSC. So that's what we also know as the terminal fees. So the terminal fees will not be a part of the base of that 82% because the government is already enjoying a share from those terminal fees as it is.
Mukhang malaki yung terminal fee natin Baka dun bawi.
So you foresee that they will have to increase the terminal fees then, tama ba?
Or does the contract also come with some sort of parameters na, hanggang dito lang? Is that also part of the TOR?
The contract prescribes a schedule for the terminal fees, and in fact, the MIAA, the Manila International Airport Authority, is currently undertaking a process of public consultation so that we are able to hear the views of the public. That includes our airport users, our airlines, and other airport stakeholders on this schedule of terminal fees that we have included as part of the concession.
And then just very quickly, when do you expect to hand operations over to the San Miguel-led consortium?
From the time that we awarded last February 16, we are looking at signing the concession agreement by the middle of March. So we're looking at March 15 or March 18. And from that time, we are looking at a period of 3 to 6 months for our concessionaire to put in place the requirements of the contract, financial closing, and other necessary preconditions. And we are looking at handing over the NAIA operations to our winning bidder anytime late third quarter to early fourth quarter of this year.
So, in short, girls, by next year, we would be on top of that best airports in Asia ranking na.
You're giving San Miguel 1 year to turn things
Grabe
around.
ka naman.
Less than a year, TJ, Usec TJ, kaya naman, no? Thanks so much.
We'll see what magic
If there's a will, there's a way.
airport operator can do. No, but to be sanguine about it, there is an initial period. We have what we refer to as the initial works, the initial mandatory works that our concessionaire is expected to undertake within the first 1, 2, 3 years. And it's only upon completion of those initial works at the end of the first or second year that any increase in the terminal fees can be implemented. So I mentioned earlier that there is an ongoing public consultation by the MIAA on the schedule of terminal fees that will be imposed or that will be made part of, or that is part of the concession. And one of the things that we made sure of is that these any increase in terminal fees will not, or the timing of that will only happen once there is already some discernible improvement in the service quality of the NAIA under our operator.
That's very good to hear. That's a relief for everyone, I'm sure.
But it's quite easy to meet that standard.
Thank you so
have
much.
the
We're going to have
CRs
to
better.
leave that there. Transportation Undersecretary Timothy John or TJ Batan. We appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you very much. Have a
After this quick break, the Justice Department downplays rumors that DOJ Secretary Boying Remulla could be stepping down due to ill health. The details when the big story returns. Keep it here.
Welcome back. You're still watching the big story here on One News.
Justice Department spokesperson Miko Clavano once again downplayed rumors that Secretary Jesus Crispin or Boying Remulla may be stepping down due to health issues.
Ang sagot naman niya ay, I'm good. Kailangan niya lang talaga mag-recover dun sa bypass niya. So may mga, may mga gamot at may mga maintenance na kailangan gawin para siguro fully recover si Secretary Remulla. Pero patuloy pa din po ang trabaho sa departamento, patuloy pa din po yung mga sinusulong ni Secretary Remulla na mga programa at mga reforma sa department. Nung tinanong siya tungkol sa mga rumors doon sa siguro ipapalit siya or magsa-step down na daw siya, ang sabi lang niya ay maraming nagseselos sa trabaho niya at libre naman mangarap.
Yesterday, Monday, Remulla himself spoke to reporters and admitted he was battling complications in his immune system since undergoing a heart bypass surgery last year. In fact, he has not been physically present at the DOJ offices for the past month. But Remulla insisted he's been working from home effectively and constantly in touch with his under and assistant secretaries. The 62-year-old also says he's on the way to complete recovery.
Right, just before we go, a little time for our big picture for tonight. Now, apart from politicians' speeches, a prayer rally in Cebu over the weekend, headlined by no other than former President Rodrigo Duterte, reportedly included these female dancers clad in a revealing silver attire. Now, this photo circulating on social media shows slender women smiling in front of an LED screen at the Filipinos Are Not For Sale prayer rally in Cebu City. All of them were dressed in identical outfits, silver bustiers, and short skirts. Netizens have since questioned why the female dancers performed at what was supposed to be a solemn event.
Hindi naman si Digong, parang naka-ano pa. Prayer.
Praying over.
Oo, di ba?
Well,
let's
they
leave it to
sold
the...
it as a prayer rally. That's why I understand why people are questioning.
I'm just gonna quote
dancers.
the quote card of the Philippine Star, where President Duterte, who once called God stupid, preside over prayer rally in Cebu. Okay, let's see what there.
Buti na lang, madali na lang magresibo ngayon kasi naibabalik-balik natin. No?
Ayun nga.
Yeah.
What they said before
Yeah.
with VP Sara naman.
Right?
Let's call
with
it
the
news
post that was taken down.
The memes help too.
The memes help us remember.
Baka maging
Ang
meme
bilis,
yan.
no? People are so fast to mag-archive ng resibo.
Dapat ngayon kasi mabilis na rin mag-delete.
Even if
ang
it's
mga
stories
tweets.
or reels or stories pala, which disappear.
Mabilis mag-delete ng mga statements. Di ba sa ano?
Mabilis din mag-screen record. On that reminder, that's it for the big story on this Tuesday night.
We're One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.